So what is flipped learning? Now, a lot of people will tell you that flipped learning is when kids watch a video at home and then they come into class and then they do some kind of activities. Now, that is only partially true. It is not just sending the content home. In fact, you can do flipped learning without sending any content home. What flipped learning is when you provide the lower level learning, the remembering, the identifying, that basic knowledge development. You're going to take that lower level learning and put it into the individual space. So that might be the student doing it at home. It might also be your students doing it in class by themselves. And then the higher level learning, the application, the analyzing, the evaluating, and the creating, that's going to happen in the group space where the student has frequent access to you and to each other to bounce ideas off, to get some help from, to get feedback from. And that's really how things are going to revolutionize. So it's not just at home with videos and in the classroom doing activities. It's actually about the individual learning being done at home and the group space now being focused on the higher levels of learning, that deep thinking that you need to make sure your students are doing in your classroom. Now, in addition to this, there are 3 approaches to flipped learning. The first is the traditional one, which I often will term flipped classroom. Now, the flipped classroom approach is basically the students are going to have a look at content at home, and whether it be a video, an audio, or maybe it's a written piece of content that they're going to read. And then in class, the whole class are working on the same bit of content at home, and then we do the same activities in class when we get together. The next approach is called the in-flip, or sometimes it's called the blended learning approach. Now, this is when there are videos or there's content that's made that students can access individually, but then they're going to access that in your class, not at home. And then as well in your class, they're going to do all the other activities. And what you're doing is utilizing the videos, the audios, and the content that you write. You're utilizing that to free you up so that you can spend more time moving around the classroom. And I've seen this quite frequently used, particularly in primary schools, where they will have students accessing videos or reading content or listening to audio, and they'll split their class in half. And so maybe 15 of their kids will go and be engaging in the video aspect of things, while the other 15 have other activities that they're doing, and then they'll do a swap. And the teacher will spend most of their time in the activities section helping the students actually apply their learning and leave the kids to actually access the content bit on their own. Now, obviously, how much time you spend in each of those sections and your approach there would vary according to your students, their age, their skill levels, etc. And finally, the last approach is the mastery approach. And this is the approach that I often term flipped learning. Now, with the mastery approach, you're essentially going to provide the content to the students and a whole bunch of activities. You're going to design a lot of formative assessments, and the students might even come up with their own kind of assessments. You make sure that your objectives and your aims are super clear for your students, because in the end, they can't move from one topic or one subject matter to the next until they've shown you that they've mastered or learnt that objective. So for example, I teach a lot of PDH, PE in Year 11 and 12 in New South Wales in Sydney. And one of the things that I understand is that if my students don't understand energy systems, they then can't really apply anything to training methods. And so until my students can show me that they've learnt and understood the energy systems, I don't let them start to learn the different types of training and training methods. Now, that is a mastery approach where they actually don't get to move on until they've shown you that they've mastered that bit of content. That's also often referred to as a competency-based approach, where you make sure they are competent in this area before they can move on to the next area. And it's actually a very good, a very efficient way of helping students to learn, because students actually learn. They don't get left behind if you're using this approach. They may not get through the same amount of content as each other, but the content they have gotten through, they have understood, which I think is really important as we think about helping our students to engage and learn the art of learning and to begin to enjoy learning. If they never get success at it, they're not going to enjoy it. Whereas this way, they will get success at it, even if they have to keep pushing through and you have to keep reteaching them and helping them to relearn content. They still are going to get that great experience of, yes, I've done this, even after putting a lot of effort, because they don't get to move on until they've mastered it. And that, I think, is fantastic for helping our students to become lifelong learners.